Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Reverse Sweep. Major 4 is in the books, and I am here with my lovely guests. First off, I know you guys have missed him. You comment every time, and he's back. Doug Censor Martin. What up, Doug?
Hey, what's going on, guys? How's everyone doing tonight? Or I guess today or the morning or the afternoon, whenever you guys are watching, but it's good to be back. Really good tournament. A lot of great moments.
Doug's back, and then as per usual, Chris Parasite. How we doing?
Hello. I'm great. Just wrapping up here at Major 4. Obviously, we're not at our usual setups, but we're still bringing you the content straight after, the tournament.
Yep, and then unfortunately, I know that he's going to have something to say about our bracket not really panning out the way that that we would have liked it. We would have liked it to last episode. Patrick,
listen,
Bryce.
I tried to tell you guys, man. Listen, I tried my hardest. I was like, listen, guys, trust me. I have the script. I labeled the winner bracket final winner, the loser bracket final winner, and the grand final winner. And you all were against me. You all thought it was OpTic in all those situations. But yeah, it feels good, James. It feels good to be validated as 3 out of 3 now in our bracket predictions. I predicted the correct winner every event for the last 3 events. So yeah, I mean, if there are people out there that want to, you doing a little bet action before the tournaments, you might want to just tune into the reverse sweep because I've got the script and I'm giving it to everybody for free. So something to consider.
Well, there we go. And before we hop into the first topic and talk about grand finals, OpTic, LAT, I just wanted to take a quick second to thank all the audio listeners, as well as everyone showed so much love on the last episode. I think it was one of our highest viewed episodes. So you guys have been showing a ton of love to us over here at the reverse sweep. And so thank you guys for tuning in every week. And
but James, there's one thing that I noticed, although I did love that the last episode performed really well. There's one thing that I did notice. Only 47% of the people who are watching are subscribed. So I'd love to see more people who are watching. If you guys are watching, whether it's on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever the case may be, if you guys hit the like button, the follow button, the subscribe button, all of us here would appreciate it.
Leave a comment, do it all.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. Just hit the sub button. It's easy. It's quick. Half of you aren't subbed. But enough of that. Let's get into grand finals. LAT took home Major 4, and they broke the champs curse, which I didn't even hear that was a thing until today, to be honest.
The champs curse is weird though because not many teams stay together the whole time. They'll break up after one event. These guys have stayed together a year after their champs win, basically. And the champs curse really only started when champs shifted to being in the end of the year, right? So Black Ops 3 and on, so 2016. Because before that, there was champs and then events right after. So it's kind of it's a unique situation because Thieves is the only team who's really ever stuck it out the whole time. I think the only other team was Envy, right? In IW. They won in Black Ops 3, they stuck it out in IW. But other than that, all the other teams have basically broken up within a few months because there's so much that happens after champs, like a long off season, the beginning of a new game. So yeah, shout out to those guys for sticking it out and believing in their team, and then coming hot and winning Major 4.
To be honest though, I never really put any validation into that champs curse. Whenever it was brought up, I was like, oh, I forgot that was even a thing. Because at least with Thieves, they didn't really have a direction to make changes that could improve them throughout the entire year. And we know while when it comes down to making changes, most of the time teams are bringing in rookies. I don't think anyone's going out of their way to pay insane buyouts for players. So they never really had options to make changes in the first place. I don't really think they really had an option to improve there. So they stuck it out. We knew what this team was capable of. I felt really good about them going to the event. I didn't have them winning just because OpTic looked a little bit better online. But, congratulations to the LA Thieves. They played insane Call of Duty this weekend.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys, and I think the Thieves definitely deserved it. And it's kind of heartbreaking for OpTic, and especially for Dan, because I really care about seeing Dan perform well in the league, and he did do really well in the finals. However, OpTic again fell short, which to me I think could almost be a good thing because you have Major 5 coming up. You do have the World Championship coming up too. I would love to obviously win if I'm in their shoes, but at the same time, I know that my eye is on just being better and just getting better every single day and learning from my mistakes, because the biggest event is the World Championship, and obviously that's the one that matters the most. So I would look at it in terms of just like trying to improve if I was OpTic, because Thieves, like you said, if they play like this, they could win the World Championship again and go back to back, which has never been done before, I believe. So that could be really interesting.
Now, how
Yeah,
far
I mean,
would...
I think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, I think they're in a really good spot. Going into the end of the year, I think they've cleaned up a lot of the things people, gave them flack for. Benjay and Nassim, our co-host on the flank, was always very critical of their S&D and kind of throwing away advantages. But at this tournament, they were able to beat the best S&D team at one of their best game modes. They were also able to beat quite a few other teams in Search and Destroy. They just looked like a ridiculously dominant team while still keeping all the improvements and consistency that they had in hardpoint and control. So Thieves looking like their Vanguard selves. As for OpTic, I think this isn't a bad thing for them. Obviously, losing and getting second isn't the ideal, but I think them losing both grand finals in basically similar fashion, and two out of the 4 maps that they lost in the grand finals being identical to both teams, it pretty much gives them like a blueprint of where they need to go to kind of like beat these teams in the grand finals. I think if they make it to a grand finals again, you'll probably see another team like Thieves or maybe even FaZe or Ultra make it to the grand finals. I think we have our pretty much solidified like contender teams. And I think they really need to not auto veto Embassy. I think that's where this is killing them. I think they haven't looked that good, in Hydro Hardpoint against some of the better teams. And they really need to improve at either Expo or CeeLo, obviously Expo being one of the newer maps, because their control is pretty much lackluster compared to, the teams like Toronto, who were considered the best control team at the time, and now Thieves, who were able to beat OpTic in 2 controls in the grand finals. So
now, like on the front of like, I feel like we got 2 incredible series with OpTic and Thieves, with the winners final and the grand final. How far behind do you think like the 3rd place team is? Like, obviously those are our 2 best teams in the game right now, and I did feel like they were pretty neck and neck with Thieves coming out on top. Is it still pretty close, or are those 2 teams kind of on their own little pedestal right now?
I think it's super close. I still think our top 4 is really close. Like on any given day, I think Thieves, OpTic, Atlanta, and Toronto. If everyone is playing their best on any given day, I think that's a coin flip. If all those teams are playing their best. From after that, I think is where it really separates from the competition. Going down to Surge and New York. I think that's where the gap is between the top 4 and down. To me, at least, the last month and a half, I just think Thieves and OpTic have been playing better Call of Duty, especially Thieves. I mean, they've looked. They're so disciplined. They're more disciplined than every other team. They don't have to rely on kills to win series. Like OpTic, don't get me wrong, had a phenomenal online stage in Major 4, but it's like we were getting performances from Huke that were just not the average of what we've been seeing from him. And same thing with, when we've seen it from Dashy in the past. It's kind of the same boat. So, but I do think, those 4 teams are really even neck and neck right now. And on any given day, any one of those teams could be the winner.
Yeah. And
Doug, what do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I basically agree with everything you guys are saying, and it's kind of disheartening to see how OpTic continuously plays the CeeLo control. And I was thinking when they were going into the map as well, that map 6, I was like, they just lost this the last major about 5-6 weeks ago. They're probably going to end up losing this again, and it ended up coming down to that last round. If maybe Huke was a pinch a little bit earlier, they could have forced a Game 7, Fortress S&D. But yeah, I don't understand why if they lost the Hydra Hardpoint in the first series, they wanted to continue to play it in the second one. That to me, I just think that that's a mistake with the vetoes, if I'm being honest. I think they should have just played Embassy, and maybe it would have been a different series. But again, like what Pat said, this really is neck and neck. I think honestly, FaZe is somewhat slipping down a little bit from what we've seen from them throughout the year. Obviously, they're still very consistent, getting top 3 at every event, but it just seems like they're losing that extra umph in S&D. Their hardpoint is still a little bit 50-50, but it does seem like OpTic, Thieves are improving and still doing extremely well too. So going into Major 5 and Champs, I expect to see similar results.
Now,
sure.
I will start with you on this one, Doug. We'll kind of transition into, I guess, a broader topic about just OpTic in general. Like, where do you guys see them going from this stage on? Obviously, back-to-back finals is a win in some senses, and I have this kind of later in the episode, but I do kind of want to bring it up now as well. There's this whole level of like mental blocks in COD that have always kind of been talked about. You might get a mental block against a team, or we've had FaZe go an entire season where they're making grand finals left and right, and they can't seem to just finish it out. Where does that kind of like fall in, and how does the OpTic team kind of avoid something like that happening, where they, whether it's a mental block and people are starting to say they can't finish tournaments, or it's a mental block against LA Thieves, or whatever the case is?
Well, I think it's just simply put as just doing vetoes. I think LA Thieves are extremely deep, especially when it comes to S&D and control. So you have to be on point with those hard points. And if you're going to lose map 1 hard point to Thieves, that's all it's going to take for them to separate them from you. So I think for OpTic, just fix up your map pool a little bit. Continue to play how you're playing. I mean, Thieves came out on fire, on point today. If they're going to come out like that, it's going to be really hard to beat. So I think OpTic is still getting better. They're still trying to realize their ceiling. Huke has to continue playing the way that he is. I think everyone on the team has to continue to step up. Dan did step up from this final compared to the first one, so you love to see that from the rookie. So you're really just relying on the veterans and the superstars to come out and do their job. So I think they're just in the contention, and you got to continue to just iron out their game, and they'll have a great chance of winning Major 5 and a great chance of winning Champs too.
I wouldn't really put any warrant into like having a mental block, whether it come from winning or like, let's say, playing a certain team, because some people will say that FaZe has a mental block versus OpTic. I just simply think that OpTic is a better team than FaZe right now. I simply think that OpTic need to improve on their map pool. Like I said in the earlier, they're squaring up on Hydro versus Toronto and versus Thieves now, and they just have to come to a realization that they're just not that good at those maps. We've already said that OpTic in general have struggled with discipline issues throughout, the entirety of this game until recently, where they started brushing up on that stuff. But even then, look at the maps that they're really good at. They're really good at Mercado. They're really good at Fortress. Those are 2 maps that are very quick and fast-paced. Mercado having probably a little bit more discipline. However, Hydro is one of those maps where you have to be very strict. It's heavy on rotation. Some people will say it plays traditionally like an older style map, and I feel like OpTic still make too many mistakes to rely on that map and mode combo. They gotta improve either, obviously, on that game mode if they want to continue to square up versus these teams, or they're gonna have to start playing things like Embassy versus some of these teams, because that's notoriously been one of their auto vetoes. When they run into a really good Hydro team, that's where they faltered both times so far. When they run into a team that's squaring up with them on Mercados or Fortresses, they've been able to take them out relatively quickly. So as for OpTic, they just got to improve their map pool. They're really close. Thieves has a little bit more of a broader one, and I think that's what essentially is pulling them ahead in a long series. Pat, thoughts on the little mental blocks and stuff like that, and what direction OpTic is going?
I mean, I don't think it's a mental block, but I do agree with you, dude. I think, I'm actually surprised, Chris, that Hydro got in. That would have they're allowed to veto 1 hard point, right? In a best of 7.
They auto veto Embassy because whenever
but that's
they
what
had
I'm saying
on their team, they just didn't win it. But
yeah,
also,
that's what I'm saying though. They just got smoked on Hydro and they let it back in. Like
they didn't get smoked. It was close, but they were.
You know what I mean?
They brought it back.
Yeah,
so
you know what I mean.
I think that's
Same thing.
that's probably a bad thing that it was so close. If they would have got waxed on it the first time, probably don't play it.
Maybe. I agree. I think they play bully ball on those 2 maps versus a lot of teams. It gives them a lot of confidence. But if I'm OpTic, like all I care about is getting better at Hydro and Embassy. Hardpoint. That's like, you can't have an auto veto at this level of play. Honestly, you could never have had an auto veto in the history of COD, and teams that did, like, it rarely worked out for you. And so I think, they definitely need to make their map pool deeper. But aside from that, I mean, I really don't think there's a mental block. I think when we look at FaZe, like, yeah, they don't have a great track record against OpTic, but that series made no sense to me. Slasher was somehow by far and away the best player in that series against OpTic this weekend, and then the series right before, it was the opposite. So I just think their FaZe is super inconsistent. Their respawns are super inconsistent. FaZe played terrible at controlless events, so I wouldn't chalk it up to a mental. I just think at this level, there's a lot more nuance to it, to Chris's point, with the vetoes and map depth. So I haven't seen enough to make a case for someone having a mental block.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, random question: Do Thieves play OpTic in this next qualifiers? Because like my thought is like if I'm Thieves or any other team, like would there be any? This might be a dumb question, but like would there be any positive in them like purposely vetoing? Like if you're OpTic, do you want to keep playing Thieves on Hydro in these qualifier matches for the like reps and
Schedule's not posted. Can't find it.
Okay. And play these maps like as much as you can that you're not good at, because obviously they're making champs. Like it's not a question.
Yeah, they're qualified. Yeah.
So it's like, do you want to play those maps regardless of the outcome? And then if you're Thieves and you know that OpTic wants to get these reps in, like, and they veto those maps so they don't get those reps in, is that a thought process at all? Kind of a random question.
You're going Inception on us, James. You're going the game within the game within the game.
I know.
This should be some insane like 3D chess fucking moves. I don't
think it's that deep.
I don't think it's that deep either. I think you just got to get better at it in practice. I want to say, sorry, I'm eating a little candy, but I want to say that FaZe kind of did something similar going into this tournament. They knew they were going to play Surge pretty much round one. I think it was like basically solidified. And their last match of the qualifier was against Surge. And they played a lot of the maps that they basically played on LAN. I think they bet on playing some of those maps at the tournament. And they were like, okay, usually we have really tough series versus them. Let's see if we can throw some curveballs their way and see how it goes. Obviously, they got fried. But maybe they didn't really look at it in that perspective of like, oh, we got fried. Let's just not do it again. They were like, okay, we got beat, but let's figure out how. So, I mean, I think there's definitely a way where teams can try to experiment with their map pool a little bit. But, I mean, I wouldn't read too much into it. Yeah. I don't think teams are going to go buck wild with their choices and risk basically starting in losers at a major, because at the end of the day, they might be qualified, but they still want to do well at the major. If not, win another tournament. If you're
still what, $500,000 on the line?
Yeah,
majors.
Now a little more hot topic in across Reddit and Twitter right now. The LA Thieves coach was sitting behind OpTic during the FaZe match and watching their 4 POVs, and people are losing their minds over it.
I'll take this one, James.
Okay.
Copium.
Yeah, super copium. Listen, I was there the whole weekend behind the stage. Every player on every team was sitting behind every team in that same spot the entire time. Like that, it's just how it was. Like if any other coach, you could probably go back on the VOD and find multiple coaches, multiple players doing the exact same thing, watching teams that they were about to play. It's just how the setup was. It had nothing to do with Thieves, nothing to do with Shane, nothing to do with any other team. It's just how the CDL set it up. They probably should have considered that, but at the end of the day, I don't think it really changed anything. I think people are just on some serious copium and pissed that their team lost.
Even so, could OpTic's coach not, or analyst coach JP,
sat behind Thieves the whole time? Yeah, the whole time, dude. At any point, any team this weekend that was playing, any coach, player, substitute, general manager, owner, anybody could have sat behind every team that was playing. It's just because of how the setup was. Those are the only seats available to sit behind to watch the games like up close. So
it actually looked really nice, Pat, to like be able to watch that real POV from up close. Like there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a shout out. I mean, it was a pretty cool little setup. I know this was supposed to be in New York originally at like a true major with fans, but I mean, for a makeshift event at the Belong Arenas, like it was set up pretty nice. We had all the podcasts set up. There was a little bleacher area set up. And the venue itself was really cool and accommodative. But yeah, I mean, I just think people on Reddit and Twitter just cling to anything that can be used as an excuse. But in my opinion, it absolutely played no impact. It was just a funny coincidence.
Not only that,
Shane just wanted to watch some damn games.
You really think that them sitting right behind them is going to have more impact than all the fucking hours of prep work they did coming into the tournament? Bro,
No. That's why they won. Let's be honest. Let's be clear. That is why Thieves hard countered OpTic this event too. They did their homework. Like, I think, Chris, we were talking about it, that Fortress S&D. Like, Thieves played completely different in the online stage, and then basically straight up hard countered how OpTic played Fortress S&D. I think just in general, Thieves were they were just better prepared than OpTic. Straight up, they basically knew their game plan start to finish, did their homework, watched. Obviously, it was clear, a ton of VOD. So yeah, Shane sitting behind OpTic playing for an hour changed absolutely nothing. There wouldn't even be enough time to like come up with a new strat that he just.
no, and
he
most
just
of the
watched,
time,
like,
you just sit there and like you see the POVs and you're just probably watching them take a gunfight and die.
yeah, he was on his phone half the time, like just chilling. So people are on some
It's not that
serious
deep.
opium.
Definitely not,
It's not
that deep.
It's just copium.
Now on Doug, whenever we have you here, I feel like we have to talk about Boston Breach a little bit. Obviously, you're org. What's going on with Boston, and what do you think needs to change here in these next couple weeks with Toronto and champs approaching?
That's
Not enough.
Doug.
I appreciate it, Chris. Not enough OBJ, way too much slaying. That's really the story of Boston. I mean, it shows, the stats are great to show and reflect to see how a team's performing in terms of a lot of different ways. And I think a lot of people just look at stats in terms of green is good and red is bad, but that's not always the case. And I think with Boston, it's always green, but the result is an L recently. So I think they just need to be able to play through the hard points more. Just play around them more, because they have a lot of talent and a lot of gun skill and a lot of awareness on where pressure's coming from, winning gunfights, great mechanics, right? So just utilize them around the objectives and play through them and manipulate players that way, because clearly right now it seems like there's like a kink that's off with everything that's moving. So, and also, yeah, I think if they just continue to do that, because Kyle just went in about 3 weeks ago, because he obviously was just on our team, so we just replaced him. I think we've had like a week and a half or so that new force. So Kyle has just been with him for about 3 weeks. So I think combination of just having a lack of practice and figuring out who's going to be a little bit more of the selfless players in the team is the result. And obviously on top of it too, not to make excuses, they did play two of the best teams in the game. So, but you do have to beat the best to be the best, and that's really where I leave it.
I'm right there with you, Doug. I think the Boston camp just needs to play way more discipline. I don't think they have enough on that team. I don't think they have leadership. I think a lot of the time they kind of have the right idea of what to do, but they don't really have somebody that's kind of gluing them together and making them all useful and contributing to each other's success. Basically, it's like the same problem that some of these other teams face, like OpTic faced at one point. FaZe, I think, still faces it, maybe to a lesser degree than you guys. But still, I think a lot of people just need to understand the way, especially Hardpoint, because that's, I think, the game mode that they struggle in, works. Whenever you're rotating and you're holding a setup, essentially the first wave is where teams have options, because they're coming off of Old Hill and they can choose to break you however they want. So you need to be able to put yourselves in positions, or put your team in positions where you can help each other, read the pressure, react to the pressure, and work as a team. If people are going rogue and pushing out, they're a lot more prone to being worked. Basically, teams are going to wait, players are going to wait for each other, and they're going to clear angles together. They're going to isolate players. Whenever you get that first wave, that's when teams are not only staggered, because most of the time, kills don't all come at once. They come in waves. So players are staggered, trying to re-break, and you know where they're going to spawn, so you know where you're going to funnel them. That is when you push out. That's when you go rogue. That's because you know the timings of when players spawn and they're going to be pushing. That's because you know where they're going to be coming from, and that's because you have the space. That is the issue with a lot of Call of Duty players and a lot of these teams that basically lack discipline, like the Boston Breach. Period.
Pat, you got anything for the Breach?
Listen, Doug, mute out, bro, because I think the Breach need to bring in Doug. I said it a few times. I just think this team is lacking life. Like, I think they have all the talent in the world. But they're not. They don't feel like a team to me. They feel like just 4 really talented players. They feel like an 8's super squad. and I just don't think their teamwork is anywhere near as good as some of the other teams. And I was telling Chris sometimes this weekend, like they would win rounds or win maps, and I don't feel the hype. Like other teams get up, chirp. I see the life in them. This team was kind of just like, it felt like they were going through the motions. So my reasoning behind needing to bring in someone like Doug, I mean, given it's either they go and make a blockbuster change, which I don't think they could make happen this late in the season, or they bring in someone they already have. I think Doug has experience playing with obviously Crimp and Bean briefly. I just feel like after such a disappointing run here, if they bring in Doug for the major or for the online stage, just test it out. This Breach team is pretty safe for champs. I don't think there's a big difference between 6, 7, or 8 seed. And I don't think that they would really lose that seed regardless. So, I would like to see them bring in Doug for a series or two, see if it changes up the dynamic of the team, see how their game plays otherwise. Because I don't think the 4 they have right now is the right recipe. I don't think it's a talent issue. I don't think it's anyone on the team's fault. I don't even mind the Crimp change. I think Vivid's extremely talented, but Crimp came in and did his thing basically the entire time. He's been frying. So I just think, I would like to see Boston just test the water a little bit and try out a new lineup.
Doug, I don't think I think it would be a disjustice to not ask you your thoughts on that.
I mean, my thoughts on that are pretty simple. I'm really just focused on being the best player I could be every day on Boston Academy. There's nothing more, nothing less I can say about that. I just love playing every day and doing what I do and getting better. And, switching to an AR mid-season was a lot, but feeling really great on it. Loving my team every day and just looking to improve. Spent about 2 hours with the team watching some VOD and going to have a great day of practice tomorrow. Then we got the elite qualifiers to watch this weekend to see who we're playing. So for me, I just really focus on what I could control. But for Boston, I think they're going to figure it out one way or another because there's a lot of talent throughout Boston. We have a lot of talent top to bottom, and I know they're going to figure it out. And it's really an easy issue to fix. Just play through the hill. It's really easy. So I'm sure they'll figure it out one way or another. And I do appreciate it, Pat. But for me, it's like I really just don't care when I get a call up or where or with who, but I just really focus on the day-to-day because I just love playing, and I think we're on the cusp of winning, so I'm just having a great time.
With that being said, last thing about Boston, where does that leave Vivid? Because a lot of people were not happy with the change. I think Kremp is a great player, but I don't know if he's necessarily bringing the intangibles that Reese brought, because I think Reese is a very vocal player, and he does a lot of dirty work, while Kremp is more so focused on kind of slaying. Do you think they go back on that change, or do you think
real quick,
or is there something else that Reese could do or benefit?
I guess I have a question, Doug. Is Crimp isn't he more of a flex? Was he always a hard sub? I thought he was like a flex player. I could be wrong.
Kyle can run an AR, but he's been running a hard sub this entire year.
He's like the
I'll be honest,
AR player.
If Doug's not getting on if we're not talking subbing Doug in, I would like to see Reese come back and move Crimp to a flex role for Beans, and then let Awake run the main AR. I don't know how you guys would feel about that. I'd like, look, my whole thing with this Boston thing is I want to see him try something. Just like, you have a bunch of talented players in your organization, just try. Like, swap around and try things. You're basically set for champs, right? You've done enough to be qualified for champs. I want to see them try and make the best roster that they can for this team.
Maybe do some trials, like here.
Yeah, scrims, whatever. Like, try it out. If the scrims go well, try out in a series. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal to swap week to week even. Like, you're basically in a position where you have a bunch of talented guys. You're good for champs. You should put the best roster together that's possible. Like, what do you have to lose from that? My opinion on it.
Now on to some other teams. While we did kind of get an expected grand final, there was some unexpected matchups, like the Minnesota ROKKR beating Seattle Surge. I think we kind of have to just at least chat about what happened, and I think there was a lot of high expectations for Seattle going into this event. And
Whoa!
Whoa, what?
Here he
Whoa.
goes. Here goes Pat.
James, I've
Right
been
on
telling you
cue.
for 2 years now.
Okay, I mean,
The Seattle Surge.
You want to know what
These
it is,
guys
though?
are a roller coaster.
You want what it is, though? I talked about it on the show. The issue with these top teams, or these teams are on the cusp of being good. Sure, they might look good versus the good teams, and you want to know why? Because those teams have similar map pools, and then they go and they play some underdog team, and what happens? They have fucking auto vetoes. Regardless if another team is good at the map or mode, they won't play it, even if they're bad. Like, let's say a team is terrible at a map, they will still veto that shit just because they don't want to play it. And that gets them in trouble. Because then they're forced to square up with teams on their lifeline maps. Guess what they played against the Minnesota ROKKR? They played a CeeLo control. They were up 2-0 in the series, and they played a CeeLo control. I'm pretty sure, if I could remember that correctly.
Yes,
Why?
that's correct.
And it's because they don't play Expo. It's a new map, and I guarantee they don't even try to play it. They probably auto-veto it. They auto-veto Mercado on both game modes. So basically, if they play a team that is any good at any maps that they don't veto, even if they're not the best team, they have lifelines in series. They don't out metagame the other teams. They just go in and like, we're gonna play bully ball. And it might work most of the time. Sure. They have the talent to do it. But it didn't work here. And that is the issue with, once again, auto vetoes. And that is why they lost to ROKKR. Sure, they choked. There was there's other semantics to the whole thing. It's not just as simple as that. I mean, we saw a really bad choke that I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it. But yeah, they just...
Talking about Vegas?
No, Surge to ROKKR.
Surge against ROKKR.
Yeah.
Surge against ROKKR. The Mac Pred 2v2. 1v1 Mac.
Unacceptable.
That was
Unacceptable. I was mind blown. But regardless, you cannot give lifelines to these teams you are better than. You just can't. You gotta stop having auto vetoes. Yeah, it might have worked back in fucking World War II.
Are you talking about
It
Lamar
didn't work
now?
in World War II. It didn't work. The
Are you talking
reason
about
we beat
Lamar?
TK, the reason we beat TK at COD Champs was because they auto vetoed London or CTF. And they auto vetoed God, what was the other S&D map? They had 2. Anyway, our team out vetoed them. It's simple. You can't have auto vetoes because all we did was we vetoed their best hard point. They basically, their auto veto was our worst map. So they did us a favor by it was Valk hardpoint. Their auto veto was Valk hardpoint and London CTF, and we were horrible at Valk hardpoint. They gave us they vetoed our worst map. Think about that. They vetoed our worst map,
and
that's what happens when you
beat
take auto
them.
vetoes into consideration versus some of these teams. It's just going to be another team's worst map, so you're just helping the team out.
But that's what I'm saying, though. It's like, I don't know if these guys just care. And it's like, this team in specific, I know for a fact will always veto the same shit regardless of what the other team is good at. Like, they could play a team that is complete dog shit at one of their auto vetoes. Complete dog shit. They will veto it. That is how bad their auto veto situation is.
That's just been Lamar, dude. That's the Lamar camp strategy. It's always been a Lamar thing. Do you remember back in World War II when you guys would scrim TK? They would want to play London CTF, the last map in scrims, and they would leave it. They'd leave. They wouldn't even play it. It's like
every single time. Yeah, every single
you're
time.
drunk. You're drunk. I'm trying to tell you guys, you're literally drunk.
Might pan out at some point, but
it screws you over.
You get into the season, it will screw you over, or it might not screw you over every time, but sometimes it's going to bite you in the ass. And I think this is one of those cases. Obviously, they choked.
And they got Pred dropping 1.4s. You got Pred on your team, and you got auto vetoes. Pred is on your team, and you have an auto veto. Pred is a fucking veto. That guy's gross.
Pred is a veto.
Play every map. Unbelievable.
I think that's part of I guess I don't know about disconnect, but I feel like as a from a casual when people are watching the CDL casually, I don't think they really ever think about the vetoes that much. And it's something that kind of just gets overlooked. But I also think that, like you said, I think it's becoming more and more obvious as the year goes on, how important that's kind of turning into. And I think more and more people are talking about the veto process, even on the CDL stream with the casters and stuff. But it is interesting to see like how much weight is going into that, because I do think it's something that's not talked about that much, or at least like casual watchers don't like put much thought into. They just see a series and think the maps were either random, or they assume the pros are good at all the maps, and some of them they just prefer.
Map pool, and even the veto like process is so important because, for example, in the OpTic series against Thieves, they picked Team B in the first series, and I think that was a grave mistake. They were overconfident on their hydro, because I was talking to them before the match, and I was basically weighing the options with them. I was like thinking about, I was like basically almost not helping them, but like I was talking with them about vetoes, and I basically said, if you pick Team B, they're going to play you on hydro because it's one of your gimmicky maps. It's not a map that you guys are particularly strong in, but it is a map that you will play, and I know they're good at it. So you're going to play hydro. So if you pick Team B, you're giving them a chance first map. While if you pick Team A, you are guaranteeing one of your best maps first of the series, which will not only, obviously, if you win it, great, but you just gain confidence and you put them down. Giving them their map choice first, especially in a team that rivals you in hardpoint, in hardpoint prowess, a team that's good, is just not a good idea. Like veto process, map pool, all that stuff is super important because it can dictate the flow of a whole series. It can dictate whether you start out hot. It can dictate whether, obviously, you're playing certain maps that you might not be comfortable with, or a team is particularly good in. Auto vetoes are terrible. In short, if you have one, you're going to be at the whim of the teams you play and matchups that you play. And unfortunately, if you play certain matchups, like here, for example, with Surge and ROKKR, you're giving teams lifelines. It's not good. It's not a good idea. It's not a good strategy to win. Period.
Yeah.
Well said, Chris.
I'll start with Doug on this one. As for New York subliners, Doug, do you think that with the current roster that NYSL has, that they can win the Toronto Major and or champs?
Absolutely, they could. I mean, they lost a game 5 to Atlanta FaZe, so their S&D obviously could get touched up a little bit. Their respawn is on par with a lot of these teams. I know OpTic pretty much handled them in the winners bracket, but we've seen how this game has went, and the teams and the way teams have progressed and digressed and improved and gotten worse than gotten better. Obviously, New York started great, ended slow, but because they're building back up, they're losing in the Championship Sunday Final Four, losing on a Game 5 search to Atlanta FaZe. FaZe is one of the best search teams in the game. You still have some time to improve, adapt, figure out what maps you like. This new control map added in obviously does change up a series a lot, especially in a best of 7 if New York could get there. So, yeah, I think they just got to stay the flow, stay the course, and they'll definitely have an opportunity to win not only Major 5, but the World Championship too.
I want to agree with you because I like the people on there, but no. This is a team, I've said it before, this team gets away with their placings and how well they're playing for the most part because they are just a good team. They have good teamwork. I don't think that, like, if you put New York at their best versus Thieves at their best, or FaZe at their best, or OpTic at their best, they don't have the talent to compete with that team. They have good players on their team, but that's not even like a bad thing. Like, I think all of these people, obviously they've shown it, can win. All these people on certain teams might provide, good puzzle pieces. But I think at their current level, their talent is capped. And sure, they might be able to win surely off, based off teamwork. But I don't have faith in every single one of those people on that team being able to consistently keep up with the best players in the world right now. I think obviously they stick it out. They try to get the best placings they can. Hell, maybe they win. Who knows? But I think this team is going to get ripped apart, or people are going to want to pair up with certain players on this team at the end of the season, because obviously I think New York did a good job with, the whole project of getting players from other teams that were obviously looked upon as like outcasts outside of like Hydra, and putting them on a roster together and making a great system with a great coaching staff and players that are eager to learn, eager to win, and work together as a team. But talent-wise, these guys don't have the same caliber players as Thieves, OpTic, and the like, in my opinion.
It's short and sweet for me. New York's the 5th best team. Do I think they're at their cap, James? Yes. I think they are capped at the 5th best team. Do I think they have upset potential to upset one of the top 4 teams? Absolutely. Definitely possible. No team is perfect. I think, they could catch one of those top 4 teams on a bad day and definitely win. But to Chris's point, if all teams in the league are at their best, then New York Subliners are the 5th best team. And I think that's just the reality of the situation. So for me, they have to catch a good bracket, catch a upset or 2.
They got a good bracket. They got top 4.
Yeah, I was saying it. If they had Toronto in their bottom half of the loser bracket, I think they get top 6.
They could potentially get top 6. Like they're just
They
New York
play
this
Rocker,
event
who they're
beat
just better
Paris,
than.
New York this event beat Las Vegas Legion and Minnesota Rockets.
Florida. They beat
that's absurd.
they beat 3 of basically the bottom 4 teams coming from
And
the
they got
Florida
outside.
doesn't show up in the bracket, Pat.
Then they got smoked by OpTic, and then they
Florida
won
doesn't
last
show up in the
map.
bracket. It says
They
Florida
played-
lost to Toronto.
Didn't they play Vegas round 1?
They played
They beat
Vegas round
Vegas.
1.
They lost to OpTic. I'm looking at the bracket right now. They lost to
They lost
OpTic.
to OpTic, and
Then they beat
played
ROKKR 3-1.
ROKKR. That was
Oh
it.
yeah, so they that's all they played. Never mind.
They
I
only
forgot
beat
it's
they
the-
only
the
beat
format.
they only beat Vegas and they only beat ROKKR for top 4.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
They're a good.
That's-
They're a good
that-
team. With
Wait, hold
upset
on. How can you get top 4 winning 2 series versus the worst teams? That's
Because they beat
crazy.
Vegas round 1 for top 6. They lost to OpTic. Then for top 6 to top 4 they beat
It's-
ROKKR.
I
it's
hate
simple.
this format.
It's
I hate
simple.
it.
It's simple. It's because Vegas did really well online, which basically stole a winners bracket spot that obviously Toronto didn't play particularly well, but it probably belonged to Toronto. If we're being honest, in terms of actual team ratings. So they would have played Toronto first round instead of Vegas, and probably lost it there, and then gone down to losers and played 2 rounds, and probably got around 5-6.
Nah, bro, that's crazy.
But like
That's
you
a crazy
they
part.
That's
definitely have
human right now.
They
He does not
definitely,
like that.
Third.
they definitely have upset potential. I mean, they literally almost beat FaZe. They went last map. And they got some insane clutches on them, but yeah, they have upset potential. But I think for the most part, you're spot on, Pat.
And so with that being said, you don't think there's any room for a roster change for that camp that would make them any better than they currently are at this point of the season?
They don't have access to anyone that is going to be particular. They would need another blue chip player, as Ben J. Nassim likes to call it on the flank, which they might have later in the offseason. Obviously, there's probably going to be a big bidding war for players like Pred. I don't know. I don't think they're going to win it, but maybe there's points in time where some teams are content, or some players have internal issues, for example. Maybe they end up finding access to one that can elevate their team a little bit further. But that being said, I mean, what they've done with their camp is not to be shamed. They won a tournament, and they've looked like a pretty damn they've looked like a pretty good team. Obviously, they've been the 5th best team the entire year. So nothing bad to say about those guys. Just keeping it real, I think.
Yeah. And before we get to some more fun topics, speaking of the 2 teams that they beat, we have a little bit of a showdown for the final spot in champs, Vegas and ROKKR. Who's your guys' pick that takes the 8 spot?
ROKKR? I guess.
ROKKR.
I'm shrugging.
Vegas.
I feel
I mean, if you guys haven't seen the strength of schedule for Vegas in Major 5 is absurd. They play basically the top 5 teams. They have the hardest schedule of any team by far.
I think ROKKR has another home series where they're going to play 2 teams.
Oh,
Yeah, I
so
think
the
ROKKR's
LAN?
got this one locked up.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
play
They have
one
another
versus
LAN?
Boston
Oh,
and
that's
Surge.
crazy.
Yeah,
So I think
mean,
ROKKR's going to lock this up.
even if they didn't have that, bro, I think I would just say ROKKR, because I think the Vegas just disappointed me this weekend, man.
You think this
They
weekend was
disappointed
kind
me
of just their last shot?
This
Well,
was
what
their
happened to
chance.
them this weekend? I don't understand
They got
why
their
and
winners
how
bracket
they
spot.
lost.
They got their winners bracket spot, and they just didn't show up.
They lost round
Plain and
1
simple.
3-0, and then they lost in loser bracket 3-2. Dead last.
I
No
don't.
points.
Dude, they didn't lose 3-0.
They
lost,
choked. They choked that game 5 too, didn't they? They were up
They got
5-2, I think.
slammed by New
Yep,
York.
5-2.
They got slammed by New York. This was their weekend to pull away, and they didn't take advantage of it. I think they're
ROKKR
not
did,
gonna
though.
get this, I don't think they're going to get this opportunity again. But who knows? You never know. At the end
Think
of
about it. They're now 20 points behind ROKKR. They were tied. They're 20 points behind. They have the hardest possible schedule in Major 5. ROKKR's got a medium schedule, but they also have a home series. Geez.
They don't.
And then go to
They
LAN.
play London. They play London and Boston, not Surge in their. They play London and Boston in their home series.
James, lock it up. We got the top 8 for champs. Let's put it in the thumbnail. We don't even need Major 5 at this point.
Champs is secured. Now I do want to talk a little bit. The first part of this question might be a short answer. The second one more is like just kind of anticipating what the future looks like. But as for the remainder of the season, do we see any roster changes happening right after this major's over? And with who?
I could see a world where maybe Seattle tries. Vivid maybe is a potential option for some of teams. Obviously, if Boston isn't particularly happy with their current roster and might want to like go back on that, or if Surge is looking to try to upgrade, because obviously they've been up and down. I don't know if they need to upgrade or if they need to really hunker down and open up that map pool, because the auto veto is just not working for them. It's not something they can consistently rely on against the good teams. They're just hoping for superstar performances.
My take would be Florida, London, LAG, shocked. No roster change coming. Like, those teams are already out. Vegas, shocked. No improvement you can make. You don't have the funding to make a change. If I'm New York, Boston, Surge, or Minnesota, I'm absolutely looking at ways to improve, because like I said before, the top 4 is pretty much solidified. The top 4. Like, if I went into a coma the next 2 months and woke up and you told me that those were the top 4 teams at Major 5 and champs, I wouldn't be surprised. So I think if you're the 5 through 8 right now, those 4 teams, New York, Surge, Boston, or ROKKR, you should be looking at a change. Well, no matter where it's at, whether it's challengers, whether it's picking someone from the bottom 4 teams, whatever, you should be trying to change, because otherwise you're not, in my opinion, you're not taking a stab at that top 4.
Doug,
Agreed.
Thoughts?
I just feel like, obviously for Boston, I mean, I'm on the academy roster, so it's a little bit more of a conflict of interest for me to talk about Boston, but I do agree with a lot of Pat's takes when it comes to this. The bottom 4 teams have no reason to make a change. So the top 4 teams have no reason to make a change because they're in contention to win. And then the middle 4 teams, I think New York is most definitely not making a change though, Pat. I don't think they're going to be bringing in Morty, especially at this point in the season with how much time they play together, because I do think the chemistry does matter going into these final stretches of this year. So I definitely think there's going to be more changes, though. I would be surprised if there's no more changes to end off this season, because there is another split. We do have, we did have changes last split. There's probably going to be more changes this split, too. And then we're probably going to have more changes going into the champs. So there'll probably be 2 more sets of changes, if I'm being honest.
I think they roster lock after Major 5, right?
I think whatever team you go into Major 5 with is your champs team.
Yeah, you're locked.
Oh, so then there you go.
This is your only chance. This is your only window to make a roster move if you're any of the teams in the league.
Oh, there's
yeah,
definitely
the bottom
more
4 are out.
Now, what's weird to think about is, like, obviously, we don't know what the future is looking like for Call of Duty and what the next year's kind of content package, delivery, game, whatever it's going to be. Is it like been talked about whether they're just like adding on to Modern Warfare 2, or like what is the, because my thought process with all of this is like, this is a weird roster mania post champs if they are playing the same game, because you pretty much know everybody and how they are on the game. Like, who plays well, everybody's tendencies, and you would think maybe they're gonna add like a big map package, because the other thing is, like, we talk about vetoes and stuff. Well, it's like a lot of that is just gonna carry over if there's not some like massive content overhaul. Thoughts on what that looks like? Nobody knows anything.
Absolutely, no one knows.
I think it's just going to be the same game with, like, basically my expectation is it'll be the exact same game with a massive DLC overhaul, like a new maps, maybe new modes, maybe something new to Warzone. Like, that's my expectation. I don't think it's going to be a new game. Originally they announced this was going to be a 2-year cycle, so you're going to play the Modern Warfare 2 the whole time. And then just recently they said Sledgehammer was going to be doing some, additive stuff for the game or a new version. So I think it's going to be the same game and it's just going to feel like Modern Warfare 2 2.0. That's my expectation. New maps, new modes, stuff like that. I don't see, I don't see how in a development cycle they could have last minute made a brand new game. So that's what I'm expecting to happen.
I don't know if they're going to be able to pass up making $60-$70 though from every person that's looking for the new Call of Duty experience. So I do expect them to charge a premium for whatever they do. But if the rumors were true that they were potentially going to run this year again, I don't see the world where they have another game ready to kind of launch. So it'll probably be
the good
like an
news.
add-on.
The good news is, James, regardless of what they do, XDefiant is free to play. And there's always a chance that you can hop on over and have an absolute blast.
Pat's been loving XDefiant, and the numbers have been doing great. But in terms of Call of Duty, I do agree, Pat. Just to cut off your XDefiant rant for a second, because I do want to support it. But I do agree, though. I think that there's just gonna be a new map overhaul. I don't think they're gonna launch a new game. I did hear at one point, no new game. Then I heard that they're just gonna do DLC. Then I heard they're gonna bring in a new game. And now I'm just hearing that there's nothing. I have no idea, no expectation. But I think MW2 has been great for the viewership. I think it's been great for the drama. I think the fans have been loving it. And I think this might be the best in terms of viewership and entertainment we've had, at least in the CDL era for Call of Duty, if I'm not mistaken. Right, guys?
Probably. It's kind of frustrating. But whatever they do, I hope they bring in red dots. Yeah. I do too. I do think as well. I hope they bring in red dots, and I hope they bring in dead silence, because otherwise I might lose my mind if we get another year of no red dots, at least.
I know where you guys can find red dots on the minimap.
Where, Pat? Where can we find them?
XDefiant. Closed beta still live until Tuesday night.
Now,
that's what date exactly? What date is Tuesday?
The 25th is when the beta ends.
25th.
Okay, thank you, Pat.
Now, Jeez, that just torched my train of thought.
Because you're thinking about how much fun you were having on XDefiant, James. I saw you streaming it. You were having a blast.
Yeah, I was playing it. It's a good time. Okay. What I was gonna say was that now they do bring in a map overhaul, and we're talking about the success of the CDL this year and the viewership and stuff. First of all, do you think that they would have to, why would pros, I guess if they're good maps, pros would be excited to play the new maps and add on to the game. But if they're not, why would they want, they would end up wanting to play just the same maps that they're already good at, that we've been watching for the last year. And so that's where I'm going with this is do people really want to see the Vaznev and the Scar for another year and watch more Fortress, Hardpoint, Embassy, Search?
Personally, I think that if new maps come in, they should just add them all in and keep the veto process the same. It makes it so you have to be good at way more maps, and you can still kind of have your veto. Maybe you don't want to play one of these maps in a series, but they would need to just add in new maps and keep the same ones now.
How would practice go though, Chris? How would you be practicing every day with all these maps?
It doesn't matter. You would just play less scrims. You would just play all the maps, but you would play less scrims, or you would break up your scrims into blocks of Monday you play X amount of maps. Tuesdays you would play the other maps. I don't care personally how it would work. I think that if we're looking at Call of Duty from a big picture standpoint, we need more maps and more weapons. Granted, they have to be good and they have to be balanced, because I said it before, ranked is great. A lot of people love it. A lot of people are interested in it. But Call of Duty community is so used to switch ups and changes every single year that if we want to maintain this momentum and keep the year, if we're going to have another year, we need a lot of things to freshen up the vibe, bro. Because ranked, for example, it's going to die out at some point. No one's going to want to play hydroelectric hardpoint, in a couple months. Right? People are going to get bored. People are going to be looking for the next thing. So if you add a whole bunch of new maps at some point that are actually good, and you keep the current map pool in, then people are just going to have so much more variety. It's going to keep people playing, period.
It's crazy hearing what your guys' requests are. Now that I'm on the game developer side, hearing what you guys want is wild. Because for me, it's I'm just thinking, we got 14 maps coming to launch for corrects to find.
More
But it's
maps
wild.
more maps should be good.
No, but I agree with you.
this whole sorry, my bad, Pat. I just think this whole like era of only having X amount of maps in like competitive rotation is so archaic.
I think the problem is, Chris, there is Call of Duty is launching with like only a limited amount of 6v6 maps. Like those 10v10 ground war style maps do absolutely nothing for the competitive community. Like they could say they have 10 maps, but if 5 of them are 10v10 whatever, it doesn't help at all. And that's another fear to consider, right? Like let's say in this Modern Warfare 2 2.0 release this year, you know, they have a new version of I forgot what they call it in Modern Warfare 2 right now, but that basically that big ground war mode, and it's like there's 3 new big ground war maps. And it's like if that took a lot of development resources to create those big maps, it's going to do absolutely nothing for the competitive community. So that's kind of where my expectation is kind of low. It's like we need a very specific type of map to be not only the right sizing for you know competitive play, but also to your point, like if we have what we've had in the past where we've had DLC maps that pros just know don't work competitively, it's going to be it's really going to impact you know how these pro players feel about the Modern Warfare 2 2.0 package.
Yeah. I mean, but personally, like I was saying, like Doug brought up a good point. He's like, "What about practice sessions, bro? I don't give a fuck what people's practice sessions look like. Variety is literally so important. People don't want to see the same maps every fucking series. People want to see a variety of choices. Having more choices, as long as the maps are good, having more choices is never a bad thing. Sure, it might complicate practice a little bit, but like, who cares? Work with it. At least you'll have a lot of fun variety to play. It will not only make the game enjoyable for you guys, but it will make the game way more enjoyable to play. It will make it way more enjoyable to watch. The issue before is the reason why map sets are so limited is because they were trying to, you know, have this like veto format, but fuck the veto format. Just have the vetoes be the same. Just have more choices. It makes it so like having a auto veto is even worse because there's so many choices, but also it makes it so you have to be good at far more things. And
it just makes it more fun for a fan perspective. Like watching Expo control is definitely the most fun control to watch by far. I mean, when I watch a CeeLo, I think a CeeLo is the most boring map I've ever played and seen in my life. I cannot stand when I see a CeeLo in every rotation, every map set, control lesson.
So many rotations now, bro.
So it's like boring. Why do people play it?
Map. It's like the most played map now. Hotel used to be the most played hardpoint. Then obviously people were like, wow, everyone's good at Hotel. Let's get good at CeeLo. Let's start playing a CeeLo against these good teams. Now CeeLo is the most fucking played map. Like, just we need to have variety in Call of Duty, and I don't care what people's practice, you know, sessions look like. The whole just having 5 hard points and having 3 controls and having this is so fucking dumb. Just keep the vetoes the same. Make it so each team vetoes 1, and then you pick from X pool. As long as they're good, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Doug, anything else on top of that, or kind of hit the nail on the head?
No, I mean, this season's maps that were brought in, I forgot the name of them, like Palaya's Lighthouse and this other like night vision map. The worst maps I've ever seen. I mean, they're worse than Stonehaven. Worse than Stonehaven. I mean, what are we playing? But Expo, fantastic map. Very happy to play that every day in scrims. Love playing it. So love having a BB2 as well. I mean, yeah, if they could just add red dots, which they won't, make Dead Silence Ninja a perk, which they won't, this game would be amazing. I mean, I really do have fun playing it every day. So
if they would do things that they're never going to do, everything would be great.
It would be. It absolutely would.
They just do things that they didn't do, like they would do it, and then it would be fun.
Great quotes, guys. Great quotes. All right, we'll kick off. We got a couple more segments left. Doug, you're kind of we on our in between episodes for qualifiers, we'll do like brackets and tier lists and stuff. So unfortunately, you have to miss out on that. But I do want to ask you, kind of in terms of a ranking, who are your top 3 players in the game right now going into this last stretch?
Well, I really still want to keep Scrap up there, even though they just got top 6 and didn't do well in the online split. I really like Scrap and what he's obviously been able to bring to a team. I really like the AR Octane on Thieves as well. And I like Huke on OpTic. So I don't know. I think it's really just a toss up between all these players and these top 4 teams, though. But these are just like some of the X Factor players I see. Like, I really love Octane for his comms and the way he's just directing everyone in his team. Like, the gas that Dan Ghosty is getting is exactly what I'm seeing from Sam Octane. At least in all the listen-ins and the individual performances. I'm also seeing Dan improve too, which is great. Because I know he could actually go out and slay and drop 1.3s every series. So that's great for OpTic to have in their back pocket in case they need to change anything. So I don't know. But right now, I'd say probably Huke, Scrap, and Octane would be my top 3.
My top 3 would be so here's the thing that I just want to clarify. Just because they are a top 3 player doesn't mean they're necessarily on the best team. Case in point, OpTic didn't have anyone in the top 10 KDs overall this weekend. They still placed second because KDs and maybe individual talent doesn't always matter, and it doesn't always carry you to a high placing. So I just wanted to, start with that. I'm going to say Octane, probably one of the best, if not the best ARs currently. I'm going to say Pred because that guy is basically the ultimate super hard carry. And I will probably say Abizi because I think without him on FaZe, or even dating back to the original origins of FaZe and E United, without that kid on their team, they would not have found the success that they have. I don't think people realize how big of an impact that guy plays. Sure, he might make mistakes, but his S&D this year is literally the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. I think this guy's at over 100 plus first bloods this year. And I think the gap between him and second is 40 or something, or more. I think this guy is single-handedly makes the game infinitely easier on his teammates most of the time. And I think his impact on the team is bar none. So I think that's my top 3.
I think my top 3 would also be what Chris's is. It's just unfortunate. I actually agree with that top 3, but to keep things interesting, I would throw my honorable mentions to be Kenny, Celium, and Scrappy.
Valid.
Sounds good.
And then one final question. I feel like you guys probably don't. Most of the audience that watches the reverse sweep in a lot of these shows has probably been watching COD for a decent amount of time, probably plays the game. But we do, believe it or not, get new people who are just getting into the Call of Duty space. And so in a very broad fashion, what would you guys say is the best way if somebody's just getting into watching competitive Call of Duty, just getting into ranked play? What would you say is the best way to I guess get more involved and get into the competitive Call of Duty space if it's something that's super new to them and maybe they're interested in the past games, whatever the case is? What any tidbits of advice of people that maybe just started watching?
2 easy pieces. I mean, watch the game and play the game. Go on Twitch, watch players play it. Go on ranked and play the game.
Go to YouTube, the Call of Duty YouTube or the Call of Duty Twitch, and literally watch the VODs of the tournaments. Or if you want to do your history, just look up Call of Duty Championship 20 all the way dating back till 2013. Just look up Call of Duty Championship 2013 and you'll find tons of videos of World Championship matches dating back till 2013, where you see basically the best of the best teams play at usually the peak of competitive. But yeah, watching is the best thing you could do, especially if you're trying to look for ways to get better. Obviously, playing helps, but watching matches, looking at the minimap, listening to the casters, because obviously the casters most of the time are telling a story. Right? It'll help you kind of understand what you're looking at rather than just blindly watching.
My advice would be a few things. Number 1, watch the reverse sweep every Monday. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, got notifications on. Number 2 would be follow COD competitive Reddit. I know there's a ton of information always posted there. Follow all of the players who are involved on Twitter, players, personalities, all that. You can check through people's following and find that. Twitter's been the main hub of Call of Duty esports for a very, very long time. I don't see that ever changing. I don't know what number I'm on, but next would be to definitely deep dive Call of Duty competitive on YouTube. The old MLG channel, I think, still has a lot up. The Call of Duty channel still has a lot up. And then finally, if you're really interested in history, I think it's COD. It's COD Gamepedia. Yeah, one of the Gamepedia, COD Gamepedia. You could basically check every personality or player that you want to ever see and see what their history was in Call of Duty. You can see all the past events for like the last 10 or 12 years. They're a great source of information that's really accurate information for placings, prize money won, tournaments, how many tournaments each year, teams, all that. Roster moves will show players like history and all that stuff. So I think just type in like a player's name and then COD Gamepedia and it should pop up. So those would be my advice, but numero uno is absolutely make sure you're subscribed to Dexerto's Reverse Sweep, which airs every Monday when there's a Call of Duty tournament the previous weekend or an online match, and stay up to date with the squad and all the information and entertaining show we're bringing you.
Beautiful. That would be an incredible outro if I didn't lie out of my ass and say that I have one more question. But no, I just thought of it when you guys were talking about like going down a rabbit hole. What is, and if you guys can pick one moment, what's your favorite Call of Duty moment of all time that you're not a part of?
I'm not a fan of anyone. I have none.
Just
I have literally
we'll
none.
clip that.
I have literally none.
That I'm
Probably
not
when Apathy won BO3 champs.
I mean, obviously, like, yeah, I guess seeing my friends win, but like,
no tippable plays. Chris isn't tipping his hat to anything.
Oh no, I know what mine would be. Mine would be that Envy versus E United comeback in IW. They were down 10-0 in like the last 2 minutes, and they came back in like an absurd way. That was pretty dope.
maybe I'm just. I've always just been one of those people that like when I was like playing and competing, like yeah there was some cool shit that happened, but I never was like, I was never like, wow, I'm gonna remember this moment for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking with that much emotion, but I was more thinking along.
I don't have anything.
I was thinking like, okay, maybe there's something where you're like, oh,
I think I know
that
what
was
you meant.
tippable.
You probably were asking something like, oh yeah, go check this out, you know, for the newbies. But
yeah, Chris, we're gonna clip only the segment of me asking the question, and Chris says, I tip my hat to nobody, and then it's just la da 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 da. It's the motherfucking D-O-double-G.
Oh, it's gonna be with like the little Philip blunt in the chain.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in. It was a pleasure. We will be back. Is there how many weeks off is there? Is there a time
Just
period?
one. Just one weekend off, and then we're back.
So we won't be here next Monday. We'll be back the following Monday, all throughout the qualifiers and champs. Like we've nailed home. Make sure you guys are subscribed, like all that good stuff. And congrats to LA Thieves for taking out Major 4. Anything from you guys?
Thank you all for watching. Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, appreciate all of you guys. Love being home doing these too. Sorry to cut you off, Pat. Love being home doing these. Did these on the road with Pat and Chris for the last few, but obviously challengers. Didn't have a tournament. Would have loved to have a LAN tournament this weekend on challengers, but we're looking forward to Toronto and seeing you guys in the next one.
There wasn't enough room, unfortunately, Doug. I couldn't imagine there being challenger teams in the venue that we were at this weekend.
I can imagine.
But yeah, I mean, everything they said, and then also tweet Boston Breach and tell them that I said I want to see Doug starting on the Boston Breach starting lineup in the Major 5 online qualifier. We'll see you next time.
Do we win champs, Pat? Do we win champs around the Boston starting lineup? Get the world
Absolutely
championship?
not. See you guys later.
And I will sign a 10-day coach contract to be there with you, Doug.
Wow, that would be legendary.
We're talking fairy tales out here, Pat.
All righty, deuces.